I'm Thor. Happy Halloween. Today, I'm going to be Thor as the Wolverine, and we're going to chop it up. Talking about Alpha Widows and why it's so important that you understand what Alpha Widow is in today's sexual marketplace. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Skull, you guys. Welcome to the Dragon Ship. I'm Thor, and let's talk about it. The one that never got away. Alpha Widows. So today the panel is going to discuss Alpha Widow phenomena. Is it a myth? Is it real? And is it the female version of the dreaded Oneitis? Can a woman be Alpha Widowed and not even have been with her sexual with her alpha? We'll discuss some of these possible examples and experiences and find the truth on the Dragon Ship. So arm yourself with the experience and wisdom of the successful men I have on the panel today. With the real world examples, we're going to get into some stories too. So climb aboard. And Vikings raise the shield wall. Now let's discuss this. So what is alpha widowing? Well, women want to ride that roller coaster of an alpha man. Absolutely. They do in their early 20s. Alpha widowing is on the rise. And by the late 30s and 40s, most post-wall single women are sold the divorce porn myth of green grass. The grass is greener on the other side. The books Eat, Pray, Love. The movie Stella Got Her Groove Back. It's not really too late, but they all have one thing in common. You know, they can have it all, right? And they can have that alpha that they had in their youth, that guy that really caused the tingles. That's what we're talking about here. They want that guy that has the tingles. And yet, that guy that causes the tingles oftentimes doesn't have very many resources. He is just that alpha guy that really gets it going for her. He is the alpha guy that's that guy in the foam cannon party. That guy that she thinks about from her youth. It could be a high school boyfriend, and she hasn't seen him in years. He causes that roller coaster ride. But being female and being hypergamous, the problem is they need the security. They want that man to really get them and be the bad boy, but they want him to be a millionaire too, to ensure that she has the security and resources for when the roller coaster ride stops, it's safe and it doesn't come off the rails. That's what we're talking about here. And the female social order that reinforces this soulmate myth and promotes it to all media. And we even have quite a few white knights that promote this soulmate myth that feeds both into alpha widowing and Oneitis. It is dangerous. So let's talk about alpha widowing, the phenomena that happens out there when women pine over a lost love. There's actually some evidence that when this happens and the woman settles for the second best, that they have certain behaviors in that relationship where they could not truly give themselves to their new husband. Let's just call it husband for now, or long-term relationship. I mean, let's use the example of Titanic. It's in our movies, right? What did Rose do? She had this affair with this guy, Jack, right? And she was promised to this other guy who was the millionaire who could provide the lifestyle that she really wanted. But Jack really turned her on. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. He really did die. So he really was she was kind of a widow in a sense, although they weren't married. But the whole point of the movie, what I find fascinating is at the end of the movie, she has this flashback of her life where she did all these amazing things that her husband provided for her, children, grandchildren, flying around like Amelia Earhart. Wow, these amazing horse adventures, right? And yet she's on that ship with that diamond or whatever, and she is pining and sacrificing in her mind to the one that she didn't get, which is a good example. It is actually that romantic thing that really turns girls on because it feeds right into their hypergamic nature. The thing that they think about the most is acquiring and securing the highest possible quality male for procreation, and it's genetically. And you can see this with all female fiction and romantic fiction. It's about that guy that gets away. It's so enticing and interesting. The sexy sons theory, right? So with that, I want to go ahead and play an intro and then bring the guys up. And we're going to ask these questions. We're going to ask these questions and we're just going to chop it up. And we're going to tell some stories about alpha widowing. And then we're going to answer, is Oneitis the male equivalent of alpha widowing? And Oneitis, of course, is when a guy becomes so focused on his soulmate that he actually becomes dangerous to himself. And in many cases will actually self-delete. So we'll talk about those two and how they might be similar and how they might be very different. So here we go. Let's take a look, and then I'll bring the panel on.
The number one, take it. And the number one reason your woman's always mad, fellas, the number one reason your woman is pissed the fuck off, because you ain't her first choice. Fellas, you ever catch your woman just looking at you, but not saying nothing? In her mind, she's thinking, how did I end up with this ugly motherfucker? Oh, Lord, this motherfucker's ugly and stupid. I had a good man and I blew it. Damn, Lord, kill my man. Kill him, please. Kill him while I still look good enough to get something new. Please kill this motherfucker.
All right, let's add everybody back to the stream. Let me welcome Phil Foster, the amazing Chad from Texas. And let's add Glenn Laurence, my brother down in Hollywood. We're going to bring up Mark Daniels, Raith Deantior, and my favorite. Hey, Junior, how you doing, Huds?
Oh, I'm the favorite. I'm so honored. Doing good, man. Excited to chop it up on this topic.
Oh, me too. I'm ready to go here. Let me wet my whistle real quick here, and then we'll really get started and we'll get going. So what do you guys think about this alpha widow? Let's go ahead and start with some questions, huh? What do you say?
Sounds good.
Let's ask a question and we'll go about it in round table. The first thing, maybe we should just define what alpha widow is. So what it is when a woman misses the opportunity to consolidate on a confirmed high sexual market value man, that becomes the new standard for what she believes she can attract in potential mates. In layman's terms, she's had, let's say, she herself is a 6 and scores an 8. And she has this guy in college, wherever, it's usually with the young women. And then it fizzles out, or she can no longer access this man for some reason. But it really got the tingles going. And then she meets, regular Joe, who's a good provider and makes her feel good. And that's wonderful. But in the back of her mind, there's that alpha, right? And then 10 years later, they have that college reunion or high school reunion. Or in the case of today, she finds an interest in him for something that reminds her of him. And she sees him on Facebook. Facebook is a mania destruction for relationships. She finds that old alpha. Hey, how are you? Let's catch up. Right? And so it's always there in the back of her mind. And her current man just does not fully measure up. In fact, her girlfriends, and I've heard this told to me many, many times, will have the conversation, well, I really love my husband, but I can't fully give myself to him like I did Chad as a freshman in college. So what do you guys think about that? Is that a reasonable definition? How do you define an alpha widow? Phil Foster.
Good morning. To me, an alpha widow is just a girl that, or a woman, whatever you want to call them today, in today's age. I call them other things. But I won't say that on the show right now. No, what it is it's a lady that's, been, handled up properly, in my opinion. Okay. And then she goes through life and she's looking for that experience again. You scramble the guts, you scramble the brains. And that's just what happens, man. She will forever and ever remember who you are. The experiences you provide a woman, it's psychologically, emotionally, and sexually are what cause that. 100% agree. But I think that an alpha widow, once she is, I guess you could call imprinted on, that's it, man. It's a done deal. She will forever be searching for that. And 9 times out of 10, when a woman is in that situation, they make promiscuous, poor choices in their life because they're looking for that feeling over and over again. That's all I got.
True. I mean, that dopamine feed is such a big hit too. That's a big part of social media. It titillates, and so do those romance.
Titillates.
It does, though. or shall we say, it gives it. I mean, you've heard girls describe this. He gives me the tingles. It's primal and visceral, and that's the best way that I can describe it, because the drive for her is to lock those genetics down as rapidly as possible, for fear that opportunity won't come to pass, and that's inbuilt into the instinct. It's a vastly different feel for men, because our instinct is to spread far and wide. Very different.
Oh yeah.
Glenn, what's your take on alpha widow? What is your definition, and how are you seeing it today?
So I define alpha widow as a woman that has experienced her best experience sexually with a guy that now becomes the standard for what she wants to attract. She feels that this guy is the standard. She shouldn't have to settle for anything less than this standard now. And she compares that standard to anybody else that comes in her life. And they get stuck with these guys that don't necessarily meet that standard. And they're still pining, or they're still desiring the experience that they had with this guy that is the standard that these other guys just cannot measure up to. That's what I think an alpha widow is.
Okay.
Basically, all my exes have been alpha widowed.
You were so humble.
Verifiable.
Give him a sound check on that, Thor, please. Lightning bolt, something.
Okay, let's see here. We got something, I'm sure.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Oh, how about this?
There we go. There we go. But no, I think when it comes to alpha widows, and can a woman be alpha widowed without even having sex with a guy? Man, I think that's very possible. I mean, there's women that are alpha widowed by their fathers, in the sense of like they see their father as this dominant masculine man in the household, and the guys that they're around just don't measure up to what dad was.
Oh, put a pin in that. Let's ask that question when we get into it, because I think that's worthy of a debate, because we want to talk about that, because I think there is some chemistry that goes on to get it to that ride or die level. But I think you're right. I think they can obsess. So let's make some distinctions later. Mark Daniels, there's a man right there that has probably left a trail of widows in his wake. Let's get your take on alpha widows. What is your definition?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and like Glenn, I have quite a few of them because I always left. To me, it's a woman, at least would be in my case, or could be any man's woman that he could call up or contact after years, and she would, how would I say, she would entertain the idea of being with him again, regardless of whether she's married, has another boyfriend, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Because I've experienced that. It's kind of like they idolize him because it was the man they could never have, and he did give her those tingles and brought her a level of drama and excitement she's never been able to get since. Even though this man was really not a good provider, he was a good protector, at least in my case I was, but as far as providing, what he really provided was not stability, but drama and excitement, which is what really turns women on. You can do anything you want to a woman except bore them. They don't want to be bored. So they remember that, and it's like a drug for them. They're still attracted to it. I've contacted women that I hadn't seen for probably 35 years, and they're married and had a family, and with no or little effort, I could see them again. It's just because you make that much of an impression on them. But it wasn't because I was what they call the good boyfriend or the good man. It was because I was the rebel, the exciting guy, the guy who did protect them physically and who would fight if he needed to. But he was always running around and he always had other women. So he's a well-rounded Casanova, basically. And he's made an impression on her life that she will never forget. She'll reminisce about that.
No, I completely agree. I think you're nailing it there. Huds.
Yeah,
now,
I mean,
I find it hard to believe that you left a widow in your wake, as young as you are, but let's go ahead and hear that
I'm
story.
not that young. Come on.
So tell us what your take on alpha widows.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's not much that I can say that we haven't already said. But one thing I do want to say is it's not necessarily doom and gloom. So when you think about you're out in public and you're looking at all these girls, it's not like she's alpha widowed, she's not. I still got a chance there. I don't believe that a woman is necessarily alpha widowed forever. Okay. And what I mean by that and why we focus so much on self-improvement here is because it can become the new alpha widow.
100% agree.
So
Good point.
that's
Absolutely.
just
That's the way you defeat an alpha widow. And I got some statistics here and some articles on how to date alpha women. You basically out alpha her alpha.
Yep. You out alpha
point.
the whoever was in the past.
Supreme wisdom from our junior member. Supreme wisdom. Thank you, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Raith Deantior, our wisest counsel. What's your take on alpha widow definition?
I think you guys have covered pretty much covered everything, but I would say this, that a woman is alpha widowed for a guy. It's not just for the sex. I think he has to offer her all those key indicators of everything she wants: the emotional, the drama, like Mark was saying, the sex. But it doesn't rely on provisioning, because most women are either the alpha leads or they'll leave the alpha, because teaching someone to be able to sustain that for a long period of time is the hard thing.
Yeah, great.
From a male standpoint. And I think women will look at those highs and remember the highs, but they don't remember the lows, especially if they walk away from them, because you hear of, people going back to someone, years later, and the relationship was a disaster, but they still go back to that relationship.
Yeah.
And it's can't be driven just by the sex. It has to be driven by her need for drama, or her need for whatever buttons he's pushing to make her attracted to him. Some of that's physical, some of it's sexual, but a lot of it it's been my experience, a lot of it for women is hitting those key emotional points that they need massaged every day. And if you're going to have a long-term relationship, and that's what I deal with that a little bit, that's what you got to do, is you got to find those points, and you've got to hit those points every day so that she feels reinforced that you're the guy that's going to meet those needs. And like I said, I don't think it relies as much on provisioning as it does, the physical contact, but also the emotional contact, and how he keeps that excited all the time.
Oh, I think that's excellent, guys. Have you seen this before? I'm gonna bring it up. This kind of rolls into it, so this will get us going on the subject with alpha one. Let me present. It looks like I have too many of these up. I can't put it in. Okay. Well, I'll just read it. Okay. It's an infographic. Doesn't look like I can put it up for some reason. So you guys heard that they did a study back in 2015, and I'll tell you why it's related. They had 2,000 female respondents. Out of the respondents were asked the survey. Are you guys getting background noise?
No.
Yeah, I can hear something.
All right, let me turn the level down and get closer. So, yeah, you got it up here. Why am I sharing that? I don't want to share that. Okay, so out of 2,000 female respondents, 43% of them said they had a backup man if current relationship ends. 8 out of 10 are in contact with the backup man. Okay. 15% said their feelings were stronger for the backup man. 50% said their partner was aware of the backup man. 1 out of 5 admitted backup man was a friend of their partner. Gentlemen, that's 20%. 20%. And 1 out of 10 said the backup man had already confessed their dying love.
No shame.
So what is this? What is this all about, guys? It's kind of interesting, but it's also kind of frightening when you think about it. This is kind of an indication into the instinctual sexual nature of women to always have something available if that alpha Chad does not come through on the genetic lottery that she can secure. So what are your thoughts on that survey as it relates to alpha widows? Let's go ahead and start again.
Isn't that an ingrained survival mechanism from evolutionary programming? Or sounds like to me. I mean, they got to have, because of the weakness of women for thousands of years. If they didn't have a man, they're gonna die. A woman out there alone wasn't gonna make it. Even though we have the modern society now, that's still within them. Like the same as us, we're attracted to a young, fertile woman. I mean, it's just a natural. It's a part of us.
Right. I think that's right. What do you guys think? Very much a natural part, isn't it? So let's ask this. Knowing that that's the case and that you just saw that, let's ask the question, are alpha widows really in the relationship then with their men that they've chosen, that are their seconds?
No, they're there for provisioning only.
Oh, interesting. Can you go a little bit deeper into that detail?
I'm going to tell you what, man, women, when they get to a certain point in their life, if they've, made those promiscuous choices to look for that fucking alpha seed and fail to find it, eventually they're going to fucking settle, man. Period. And they're going to hang around.
Right, Phil? I mean, they are faced with a deadline.
Yeah. So they're going to hang around. They're going to hang around, someone that's going to give them the best provisioning. That's the next logical step down for their mind. Okay. I can't get the tingles, but I can get the nails, hair, Botox, the fucking SUV and the double D's. I can get all those things from this man. Okay. And then just maybe while I am getting this provisioning from him, I can possibly find that, what's that 20%? Is that the statistic? Wasn't it 20%?
Yes.
Possibly I can wedge my way into that 20% and get that need met somewhere else while I'm getting that provisioning from this guy.
See, I think there's a little bit to that, but I also think I want to push back on it. I don't think they go in maliciously thinking that. I think they try to convince themselves that this guy is the guy because he can meet all these other check marks, and they're trying to convince themselves what, just because he doesn't do this right, like the other guy, but the other guy didn't do this or this or this for me, and this guy's doing all these other things. So they try to convince themselves that those other things outweigh what the previous alpha did. And so I don't think they necessarily go into it maliciously thinking that I could get provision and be taken care of. And I think they come to a realization when, after time goes by, and they realize, okay, this thing that the alpha did to me really is that significant compared to these other things.
You mean
does that make sense?
They try to convince themselves they are with that guy. I think they do ask for social proof from their girlfriends. I'm getting this married. It's such a big deal. And his girlfriends will feed into that. Oh, he is such a perfect man. He provides so well, yada, yada, yada. I think there's also other factors that play into it, particularly hormonal birth control, in the fact that it changes a woman's sexual desires and puts her in that pregnancy nesting mode 100% of the time, which is really strange, and part of it is she will go on this hormonal birth control. She will pick that guy she's nesting with. Do you guys know this happens? And then she will go off the birth control, and all of a sudden, she'll either have a kid, and then when she becomes fertile again after the kid has weaned, all of a sudden she's looking at that guy and he's not giving her the tingles because she chose the nesting guy that's a good provider, right? And that's very interesting. And there is certainly a correlation I want to get your guys' take on, because when they did the surveys from 23andMe and Ancestry.com, they realized out of hundreds of thousands of analysis for genetics that, what was it? It was 17.8%, roughly 20% of all of the children born were not the claimed father. That kind of matches up with the 20% knows the guy, the mother, that is an incredible dot to connect. And I want to get your guys' take on that. if you guys can give me your take on what your thoughts around that, supporting this theory of alpha widowing and why it drives sexual behavior with women.
Well, I want to say something here. I think, from the standpoint, and I'm going to blame men a little bit here. All right. Because we perpetuate that, men perpetuate that based on the fact that they tolerate things. When you look into relationships and whether she's alpha widowed or not, somewhere in that relationship, he's giving her the okay to do that, whether it's through his behavior, his actions, whatever. All right. She thinks he can get away with that because he's been tolerant in some other part of the relationship.
What do you mean? Like they're already together and he's not the perceived alpha. He's the second, right?
Right. He's not the perceived alpha. And then there's things that he does, or there's shit tests that she gives that reinforces that, which gives her basically a sense of, I can do this and he's going to forgive me, or I can do this and it's not going to matter in the long term of the relationship. No.
Or the guy thinks that, over time she's going to see his value and act correctly. Like, she'll correct herself. She just needs to have time to realize how good I am.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not helping matters either.
No, he's not working on himself. He's not her best option because he's not making himself her best option. All right. And like I said, and yourself because you deal with relationships too. Any guy that's going through, and I don't like to use terms alpha and betas, but any guy that has subordinate activity or subordinate beliefs to her needs, they're in for that scenario. They're helping create that scenario.
Yeah. Thor, what do you think about Coco's comment that it's a catch-22?
Oh, you talking to me? Yes, me. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, let me find her. She said, "Excellent point, Glenn." Where is she? I think it's a catch-22. So, what do you mean by that? I think that, the moral of the story is, man, these widows are made because of fucking period, and the way you make her feel. I don't care anything else, man. Beta, alpha, whatever, man. If you handle that woman in such a fashion that she has never experienced before, I just don't care. She will never forget you as long as she lives. And she will constantly compare you to every other man she's been with. And so, once again, when you have a woman that's, we'll just pick a number out of the air, like 22, and she runs across a guy like Glenn or Mark, and they handle her in such a way that makes her feel things she has never felt before at 22. And then Mark says, "Hey, I got to go." Glenn says, "Man, I got a movie I got to go make over here. I'm out of here." He's gone. She will never, ever, ever let those feelings and those experiences go, because the simple fact is she just can't. She's addicted to it. And it starts with the fucking, and it starts with fucking her mind. I don't care what anybody says. So she will forever compare every man to Mark and Glenn. I don't care. And so eventually, after she makes those decisions to keep hunting for those feelings, because let's face it, women operate on one thing and one thing only: how they fucking feel. I don't care. You make them feel a certain way, they will run through fire, fight lions, swim with crocodiles. They don't care. They'll hang meat on themselves and walk into a lion enclosure. They just don't care. They want that feeling. Kind of like what you were alluding to, Thor. You said that dopamine hit, that oxytocin, those feelings. So the simple fact is she will hunt and hunt and hunt and hunt for that feeling again, and she'll never get it again. And she will, guys like Mark, guys like Glenn will be forever burned into her hardware, into her brain. It's like downloading a program in that mind that can never be erased. It's like the master fucking program. Okay, and so
it's almost like a Trojan horse. Like, it infiltrates the system and then it just corrupts the system from within.
So both of you just proved my point. It comes down to the quality of the man.
Yeah.
I think
the quality.
Go ahead.
My
Go ahead,
apologies.
Phil.
Huds, no, you hop in here, bro. Hop in here. I'll circle on Raith in a minute.
For sure. Yeah. No, I'm just like thinking about it. Like, why do women then settle? You know, like, and I think it's an interesting question to ask. And I think that the reason why is because there's a certain expectation that if you don't get married at a certain age, then you're deemed as like a failure. And you want to look good in front of your peers, even if you don't really like the guy. And I think that's a lot of this like backup man. And when you're talking about that 17% of the children are actually from somebody else, they're just doing it to keep face and to look good to their peers and their girlfriends.
Right. I think so too.
Well, they got the clock ticking too. They want to have kids and they want to have a family, and so they got to settle. It's like, how are they going to grab that guy? The guy that does that for them is not a guy, at least I never was, a guy that really is good for relationships. Because I was always really good at being with women, picking up women. But long-term relationships have always been a struggle for me. I become too docile, for lack of a better word, as in contrast to when I was out playing the game. I never was too focused on the one girl. She knew that. She knew I went with other girls, but it was all unspoken. Nobody talked about it. And the fact that she never knew if she really had me or not. And one of you spoke, Raith talked about it. The feelings that she gets from the uncertainty keeps a constant level of intense drama in her life. And it's just like a drug addict. He gets that first high and he's forever chasing that. And she only gets that with one guy. She may meet another guy down the road and get that from him if she's fortunate, but maybe not. But she's forever yearning for that because women want to feel alive, and they don't get the same feeling of aliveness as we do as men. We get it from out there accomplishing, working, conquering, fighting, or whatever, competing. Women get it in a different way through relationships, I believe.
So let me make sure, guys. So just so I got the gist of this, when we asked the question about alpha widows, are they aware that their man they're with is his second choice? I think we all came to the conclusion, correct me if I'm wrong, they're aware of it at some level. This is not an unconscious response. Is that correct? Is that what we're saying here, all of us?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's really cool. All right.
But we don't think it's malicious either. Somebody mentioned. I don't think it is.
Right.
It's just
Right. Okay. So guys, do you know what the signs are of an alpha widow before we get into our next topic, our question on this? Let me just go over some of the signs that have been posted in Reddits that you might be encountering an alpha widow, because her ex is still there, right? That's one of them. Does she still have contact with these male friends and speaks very highly of them? Does she talk to them? Or on the opposite, is she concealing, never talking about somebody? It's a taboo subject, yet that presence of the ex is felt. That'd be something to be aware of. You know, there is some surveys out there. I won't call it a study, but it's that study where a lot or some women will name their sons after an ex-boyfriend. That could be linked to this, and it sounds like it could be, but it does happen. You guys laugh. You know why you laugh? Because you probably know somebody that this has actually happened to. I can name at least 3. Not that I'm with, but I can see on the outside. Now, is that an unconscious thing that's going on here? I don't really know, but it's something to be aware of, because I think that dot is close enough that you could draw at least a pencil line in there. Would you guys, what are your thoughts on that before I go to the next tells? Yes, no, maybe so.
Oh, for sure.
I think they just want to keep him in mind. They just want to. He's so important to them that they would name the kid. I mean, it sounds cold, but women think so differently than men do. It's just they don't think the same. They don't look at that as a stab at the man's pride and ego. But that's what it is. What it would be if I found out about that.
Well,
I'd probably have to go back and change the kid's name if I.
Well, that's the basis of a male's existential fear. The children are not his. And now we've seen close to 20% on these massive genetic studies. And then we see that there's at least 20% of the guys they know, I mean, of a girl that's having a backup guy, at least 20% of the guys know that guy. You
Well,
know,
but he's just a friend, Thor.
I
He's
really
just a friend.
Yeah, I really think that number's low.
you think it's low?
Yeah, I mean, because you really look at it from the standpoint, who gets DNA tests? Mostly people of upper middle income and above. Okay,
Correct.
so you're not even talking about the lower middle income to poor, because that's never an option. I think you see, based on just financial status,
Mhm.
that it can be flawed. I would rather take a study that goes across the broad spectrum of economic structure.
Well,
And
that's true.
I think you would probably see that it's actually higher than that.
It
I
might
would
be.
say it's probably above 50%.
I'd have to dig it up, but it's from Ancestry and 23andMe, not specific for the determination of parentage, but it was different by geography too. There was a huge spike of the test in Ireland, over 30%. That's verifiable. You can look that up.
That's a good
On
point.
those things. So it is probably likely to be somewhat larger than that.
I come from poor, so, and I know just in my anecdotal evidence of where I grew up and those kind of things. I mean, there was a lot of baby daddies in my community, and women having multiple kids by multiple men. So like I said, I think it's higher than that. I think if you look at it from a socioeconomic structure, it's flawed. Because I mean, I think I read a study, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, where they had run a test over in England, and they found it at around 60%.
So rather than saying it's flawed, would you say it's just inaccurate? It's on the inaccurate side because of socioeconomic reasons, because I think it is definitely a data point.
No, I'm just saying I think it's higher than that. Just from my own anecdotal evidence and the other studies that I read. I mean, there was one that came out of England that had it about 60%.
Yeah.
And then what they did is they took families with 2 or more kids.
Yeah.
And they found in families with 2 or more kids, with 2 kids, that it was running about 50%. And they found that families with 3 or more, that it was around 60%.
Yeah, that's got to be disheartening for a lot of men out there, because that's their biggest existential fear, is they're raising children that are not their own. And now cuckold is actually a thing. It's actually a thing. So
I got one I want to share here before you move on through the rest of the list, Thor.
Yeah.
So this is a way that you can kind of test if you're feeling like she may be an alpha widow. Is, let's say you wanted to do it. Okay. Depends on what I can say here. Let's say you wanted to do anal. Okay. Just say it like that. Say it as it is. If you wanted to do that with her and she says no or pushes back, and then you ask her, well, have you ever done it before? That's going to open the can of worms, and you're going to find out in that moment if you are actually the one that she wants to be with or not.
It's interesting. Better have a chocolate starfish navigation system, huh?
Chocolate starfish navigation, dude. Where did that come from? Just educate me on that, bro. Just give me that one at least.
You guys
My
ever
thing is,
listen to
like,
Limp Bizkit? It's the album.
Yeah, Limp Bizkit.
The chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water.
Oh yeah,
man.
Bro.
The nookie. I did it for the nookie so I could have the cookie and shove it up your ass.
Look, man. The thing is everybody. I want to circle on Raith a little bit, because it is the quality of the man, 100%. The thing is most dudes are so friggin' weak. They don't know how to take a woman and take her to that experience. Is that what you're trying to convey when you were saying that earlier? Just can you circle on that?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
There, extrapolate.
Right. Well, from the standpoint, how many fathers? I mean, and how many fathers really talk to the young men about sex these days?
True.
How many of them talk about how to attract a woman? And the reason for that is I'm older, But most men in their 30s, 40s today don't have the experience to tell their young men about that. Because I guess me and Mark, we're about the only boomers left around here. Well, you look so young, Thor. I forget about you sometimes. But I remember having those conversations with my dad when I was a teenager. And I remember my dad, laying down what it took out of the bedroom and in the bedroom to sustain a marriage. And I don't think we do that with our young men these days. We tell them, hey, it's all about feelings, and you can't fuck feelings in this, you can't fuck feelings into somebody, guys. You just can't do it, and you have, yes, the act, the physical act is a part of it, but there has to be that buildup. There has to be that anticipation. There has to be that leadership, and going through that whole scenario of, creating that experience for a woman, as well as creating it for yourself. We just don't teach men that. We don't teach young men that. Most young men find out about sex through pornography these days, which,
I
unrealistic.
Sorry, Raith. I don't mean to.
No, I just say it's unrealistic.
And I think that's what opens up the door for what I was saying earlier, that a lot of women could be alpha widowed by their father because their dad would be the most alpha man they've seen, and any guy that they have come up to does not necessarily meet the standard bearer of dad.
Yeah.
Dad doesn't have to lay pipe on them, but dad could set the standard of what a real man is, and the girl will romanticize the figure of her father and compare that to any guy that she comes across. And if they don't necessarily meet the standard of dad, they feel like everybody is not of worth. So they could be, it's not like they have an attraction to dad. They have the attraction to a man like dad, if he's that alpha guy. And then as Raith was saying, young boys today are not being raised to learn what it takes to be a man, to be that guy by their fathers. So if they're not being taught how to be a man by their fathers, but these girls are being taught what a real man is in the household, then you have these women looking for men or the fathers of their, men like their fathers, in a pool of men that are told that it's about feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Okay,
a great.
so I don't draw that conclusion, but I think it's very important that there is something out there with women when they're not raised by a strong, dominant, masculine presence that could lead her in that direction. I think having that example actually qualifies her to want and choose very carefully that kind of a man for a long-term mate. I think that's really important. And when that's not there, I don't think that's as necessary of a priority. I wouldn't call it that she's alpha widowed by her father per se, because that's a question we wanted to delve. Can a woman be alpha widowed without having sex? I think it's possible for her to get to the precipice and obsess over it, of course, because we can see that in some celebrities that supposedly have not had sex together. But I think the father thing is a very different element. It's a different element. And the girls that aren't raised with that father, what do they always have? Daddy issues. There's a strange thing going on there. I just don't necessarily buy the fact that if they have a really alpha dad, they are actually better equipped to select a mate than those that don't have that role model. I will agree with that, but I don't know that that's necessarily alpha widowing, because the alpha widow always pines for that and can't actually achieve it. Again, she was always in this quandary of having that alpha widow until a better alpha comes along. I don't know if I said that correctly, but I'm just not 100% in to the fact that the father alpha widows, I think it's something different. I think it's more like alpha role modeling, if I can put it that way.
Well, I think it basically sets up, and I'm use the word picker. If she has an alpha father, or she has a father that, is masculine, and she sees how her mother interprets that, I think that adjusts her picker to look for the same thing. Okay. And like I said, the problem isn't that, that's the wrong thing, because actually that's why women marry men that they stay with for a long period of time, and you see those relationships coming out of a two-parent household
Mhm.
because it's stronger, and they have the values based on the examples given to them. I think what happens is a lot of women will see certain traits in a man and relate those to her father, and he's not the full package. Okay, so he can lay the pipe well, to coin Phil's phrase there, I guess. He can lay the pipe well, but he can't do the other things that she's looking for, that she needs from a mate to match her father's, and to match the image that she's built of what a relationship's supposed to be. Not even what her father is, but what her idea of what a relationship's supposed to be and how to function within that relationship. And because she's doing that, she's probably going to get run through, because she's going to key on a lot of the masculine traits and less on the emotional stability of the father and those kind of things. And like I said, but that a lot of that depends on how her mother reacts to that too. If her mother is always, fighting the father, and in a subversive way, I want to say, but they stay married, that's just as harmful as the father leaving.
That's passive aggressive, is what you're saying?
Right. The passive aggressive behavior is just as harmful as the father not being there. Because she's also learned that that's the way you have to treat a man in order to have a man like that.
Yeah, that would normalize it. I could see that's pretty destructive too. That would cause maybe even daddy issues in the whole thing. Yeah.
Right. So, it's, and this is what I tell young men when I'm talking to them. And when we start looking at why they behave the way they do is, if they have a father and they've been working, that father's been in their life, they can have the same issues. Having a father doesn't necessarily mean that, everything's going to be okay. Having a father that understands himself and is okay with himself and understands the boundaries and stuff that he sets up in the relationship, and if those are good and prosperous for both sides of that relationship, and having a mother that is being submissive to that, that's the ultimate in creating a well-rounded person. Okay, from a male side and a female side. If you have a father that's a beta and the mother's dominant, it's going to be the same thing as if there was a single mother in the house, because 9 times out of 10, the father will step away from being in control of the relationship. That teaches young men that women are in control of the relationship.
Yeah, we see that with what we call the workhorse or the plow horse men, where
Right.
they're there to provide only.
So
We see that on TV a lot too.
right. So but there has to be balance in the relationship. There has to be understanding, and and I don't want to say it has to be patriarchal, because, God knows what that means these days, but it has to be based on, the head of the household. And if the woman's the head of the household, it's the same thing as a single mom, relatively. The kid may grow up with more opportunities. His understanding of relationships are no different. And if a woman is the head of the household, a girl may see the masculine side of her father, and she may start searching for that, but she's going to want to be in charge. That's where, you see the bridezillas and stuff like that. So there has to be balance in the relationship. There has to be an understanding, and it has to be projected to the children in a positive way. All right. And those are the most successful families. That's where the most successful men come from.
Yeah, and I would say that you probably would have not all women will be alpha widows. The potential, of course, is there for that imprinting.
Right.
But it's a phenomenon that exists enough that we can take notice of it for sure. And there's definitely women with daddy issues, and there are women that are imprinted on their dad and hold a high standard for finding a man. I think that's actually an advantage to them. And I want to kind of shift this into a conversation and start with Mark, who's single. But there's this thing out there. I'm going to try to draw a dot between alpha widowing and this. Could it be that there is actually this imprinting on alphas that is so strong that women might act. This might actually be the reason why men, or at least one of the reasons why men do not like women with high body counts, and or because of the chances of them imprinting on another alpha and they don't measure up to that. That could that be? That's one question to debate here. And the other one is, could it be that when a woman holds out on sex, the third date rule, guys, where he's boyfriend material, they're viewing him as boyfriend, husband material, is she actually thinking, wow, I don't want to imprint on this guy if he's not the alpha? I'm considering him for a long term and I'd rather imprint on an alpha. Is there some sort of instinct there? I'm just kind of spitballing here. But could there be a correlation there? Let's open it up to discussion, because I think that this is a valuable discussion to have. Because
can you simplify the question?
Sure.
The reason I want you to do that is because I want everyone to understand exactly what you're asking.
Okay, two parts of the question
here, but in the chat too.
Yep. So two parts of the question. When a woman holds back on sex, we all know the iron rules, right? The sex is never worth the wait, right? When you have to wait for the sex. But could there be a very deep-rooted reason for a woman viewing a man as a potential long-term mate for holding back that sex, making him wait for multiple dates? Could it be tied into the fact she doesn't want to imprint on him if he's the wrong guy? I don't know.
You can take this. I don't know if anybody reads anything about epigenetics or anything like that, or chimerism. I mean, they're doing studies now. There's a big study going on. It's been going on about 2 years, where they look at, does semen alter a woman's DNA? Okay. And if that's the case, and it does, what instinctually, or, based on, the anatomy and the epigenetics, could that be a reason? It may be. I don't know. I haven't seen the results of the study because it hasn't been finalized yet. But I think, what we do at a cellular level, we do at a global level in the body. So when you think about that from the standpoint, are you imprinting your DNA on her when you have sex with her? And that may be a big driving factor. I don't know yet. But I think any time that you have physical contact, Phil wants to talk. Okay, but let me finish. Anytime you have physical contact, I think you're imprinting something, whether it's an emotional response, a physical response, or anything. I mean, we do that. If you look in psychology and you look through NLP and other Gestalt therapy and stuff like that, we set anchors. And by setting those psychological anchors, we develop repetitive patterns that cause us to act a certain way. So I think, do we instinctually know that if something's bad for us, we shouldn't do it? I think we do. At least God, I hope so. That's how we survived this long. But does it necessarily mean that we can't rationally override that, or emotionally override it? Sure, we can.
For sure. Yeah, I just was wondering, could there possibly be that correlation? And we'll get Phil in here because he's got a lot of experience. Could there be that correlation? When a woman is waiting, she's not sure he's the alpha and she doesn't want to imprint. Is that what that is, or could it be? Phil, you're muted.
Before I answer that, can I tee off of what Raith was saying?
Yes.
Okay, so you're absolutely correct, Raith. There is a transfer. Okay, the big thing to understand, and you guys are probably going to push back on this, man, but here's the deal, man. Whenever you have sex or fuck, you're transferring energy from one entity to the other, period. I don't care what anybody says. That is a very sacred thing. Okay, so the problem is that when a woman has multiple partners, she's gathering that energy from all these different people. Okay, number one. Number two, she absolutely is gathering bits and pieces of their DNA, especially if they nut in her, period. She's carrying that stuff around. So what happens is when you scramble those guts, you scramble the brain, because you got all this different DNA from all these different people competing in her system to imprint on her. There's no wonder that, once that body count starts to climb, There's no wonder once that body count starts to climb that these women cannot get it together, and especially have a meaningful, happy marriage, successful marriage, and understand. I think that has that sexual energy and the competition of DNA from multiple sexual partners definitely plays a role in her psychology and the way her body operates. Okay. Number two, say she has multiple sexual partners and it's beta, 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 boom, hit the alpha lottery, get these tingles, get these feelings, get these experiences, and then it's boom, 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 looking for that feeling again. I absolutely believe that transfer of energy and that transfer of DNA definitely affects it. And so, like, as a man, if you're leveling your status up, of course you don't want a woman that's going to bring problems into your life. You don't want to have to compete with another man in her past, because once again, I mean, as you vibrate up and you're going towards excellence as a man, you do not want something that's going to bring you back down that spiral to the bottom. Okay. Because to have excellence, I mean, you got to have discipline, you got to have action, you got to have all these things that are going to rise you to the top. Well, if you have a woman that you cannot reconcile within your own home, what's that going to do? Basically, the moral of the story is you're going to focus your energy on a woman instead of on your mission and who you are and becoming an excellent man. So of course men don't want high body counts. I think it's hardwired into our brains. I don't think it's a societal thing. I think it's just something that we hold sacred women's chastity, period. The more status you have as a man, the better that woman has to be with you, period.
It's an intuitive knowing.
There you go. So I agree with what Raith was saying 100%. Raith was on point with that, man. He was 100% on point. I just wanted to tee off on that and say that there is that transfer of energy. Yes, sir. There is that transfer of DNA. Yes, sir.
If you want a real life example of this, all you have to do is look at Will Smith and Jada Smith. Okay, she was alpha widowed by Tupac to the point where her own kids wrote Tupac a letter after his death, wishing that he wasn't dead so her mom could be happy.
Correct.
I mean, the imprint that he left on her was so significant that she shared it with her own kids. And the kids were writing letters. That tells you, once a woman if a woman has a high body count, means she has a higher probability of being alpha widowed by somebody. Unless you are a better alpha than the version that she had, you are competing against a ghost from her past that you cannot beat.
A ghost which she has built up, Glenn, too, with her imagination.
Oh, yeah. She has definitely built up that ghost in her head. And even he could be more built up in her mind than he actually really was.
Correct.
Because she fantasizes about it. She fantasizes about how great it was. So
that segues perfectly. Can a woman be alpha widowed?
Let me, Thor, right before we transition, I want to make sure I got this point here. When we're talking about, the DNA transfer and everything like that, another piece to understand and think about, the higher a woman's body count, the more likely she has come across that alpha guy in the past.
Yeah, that was my point about having high body counts, is the likelihood that she has had that, and that's sitting in the back of her mind. And that makes your burden of performance, which I love, the burden of performance. Bring it on, baby.
Well, then here's the question,
but it gives the burden of performance back to the man. A lot of guys are going to struggle with that.
And I was going to say that this goes right to what you're saying, Thor. So let's say she's been alpha widowed before. Is that an automatic, okay, I'm done, not going to deal with this chick because she's been alpha widowed? Or are you going to step up to the plate and try to alpha widow her again?
Well, Glenn, I mean, here it is. I mean, if she is refusing to get rid of her friends that are very close, and 2 of them are still exes, but they're friends. They still remain good friends. And, you know, it's impossible to please her. You probably shouldn't deal with her. Right?
I wouldn't tolerate that if I knew about it, of course. But let's go back. Goes back to what you asked before. Can a woman be an alpha widow without having sex?
Correct.
And what have we been talking about the last 10 or 15 minutes? The sex cements the deal. So whether or not she can be an alpha widow without sex, it's possible. But the sexual intercourse and then with the transferring of fluids even bonds it even closer. So there's more there than just the act of having sex, than just the physical. There's a whole emotional, spiritual, and physical thing going on there that people really take lightly. And a lot of them don't notice how powerful it is, because a lot of times they're either taking some kind of prescription medication, they're drunk, or they're high. And that really dulls down the senses. But a person who is in tune and in flow, it's a powerful experience.
Yeah, that's exactly why we say in these long-term relationships, the sex is the cement that bonds the blocks together. For sure.
So here's a question then. And I think Thor, you're going to segue into this. Is Oneitis the same as being alpha widowed?
Correct. Beautiful, Glenn. So this is an interesting question, because, you know, I'm going to say can I give let me give my take.
No. Save yours for the end.
All right.
Save yours for the end. No,
right.
We're going to start with Huds.
Let's start with, so
Huds.
Is Oneitis the male equivalent or the parallel of what an alpha widow is? Now we know, let's define Oneitis, right? Oneitis, that guy that gets into that relationship, it's with his soulmate. We all know that that's a myth, but for most people, there's one for everyone, right? That is broadcast societally, and it's reinforced for some strange reason. What we can get into that later. We know the reasons why that's enforced, but then he puts his all into it and doesn't realize that he's not fulfilling his burden of performance, and then it's yanked away from him almost all the time. A Oneitis guy does not even, he is surprised when the relationship goes south, right? And he's all about her. He cannot get through it. He's a turmoil. He can't sleep. He can't wake. That's Oneitis, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts? Is Oneitis the same as alpha widow?
Here's the simple answer. Here's the simple answer to it. I think it's an interesting comparison. However, by definition, Oneitis is more during the relationship, and alpha widow is after the relationship. So it can't be the same thing.
I disagree with you.
Yeah, you can have Oneitis afterwards, because I've had it for a while.
All right, go ahead, lay it on me.
I deal with young men every day that have Oneitis, and they're looking, if she doesn't make it so painful for him to leave the relationship, and she leaves him, it's sustainable after the relationship.
But the question is it the male equivalent?
No.
Alpha widowing?
No. It goes away. It passes. I've had Oneitis for women for a couple of years. I was married to my last ex-wife. It took me, I had to quit talking to her for a year and a half to get past that. But we was together 12 years, and I had Oneitis for her, but I don't have it today, because if she wanted to be back with me for 10 years after, I could probably have her today. But I don't want her now. But with an alpha widow, she would still take that chance to be with that guy again, even if she's married and has kids. Just like Glenn was talking about Jada. I mean, that kind of a desire, at least for me as a man, it goes away eventually. But for a woman, and as I've said, I've talked to women that I was with 30-some years ago, after not talking to them all that time, they still have that desire, that longing, that yearning to experience that again, or they think they can. So at least in my experience, it's not the same. For the man, it does go away, and he moves on, and looking back, he looks back differently. At least I do.
Here's the thing, and that sparks something in my head. Here's the difference between the two. For both of them, they are solvable by the man. In order for you to get over Oneitis, you need to improve as a man and have more experiences. For a woman to get over being an alpha widow, she needs a man to solve the problem. So they are both They're both essentially men's problems.
She needs another alpha man to get
No, it's
over
not
that.
men. It's not a man problem. It's a her problem if she gets alpha widowed. You know what I'm saying?
Do you
It's not
know
the
any
man's
women?
problem.
So that's the question. Do you know any women? Like, how do women themselves get over being alpha widowed? They
They would have
don't.
to step up to another, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
Exactly.
But not
it's
just a man,
It's
not
not
just
a
a
man's problem. You said it's a man's problem both ways. It's not a man's problem both ways because if she's alpha widowed, by me, it's not my problem.
Yeah, it's not your problem, but you understand she can't solve that problem herself. We as men can get over Oneitis, but as a woman, she can't get over being alpha widowed unless a man who's stronger comes into her life.
He's just saying you transfer that problem to another man. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just passing the problem on to another man, and that still not makes it the man's problem. It makes it.
Well, it doesn't make that man's problem. It does
Exactly
for the next man.
I would say that there's similarities between being alpha widowed and Oneitis. They're parallel at some points, but they're not equally the same, nor they have the end result as the same. They have some if they were a graft, if they were a line graft, they would be parallel at a certain point, but then they separate at a point in which is the guy has more experience with other women and gets over that alpha widowness, and he realizes that it's not this Oneitis. There's plenty of them. When he gets to that mind frame, when he realizes it's that, but for a woman, it's never going to change because that guy, the alpha, is always going to be the standard bearer in her past.
But it relies on something that you have to understand. The male's life is different than a female's life. Okay, men at some point realize they have to move on in order to, in a sense, they have to move on so that they can keep functioning and improving. All right. I'm sure we could go into a group of 1,000 men and find 50 that can't move on. Okay. I don't know that the number would be that much different from women because we're operating under the perception all women are they're alpha widows, and they're not.
No. Let's don't do that. We're having fun with the
Right.
idea that there is this phenomena, and
There is the phenomenon. But that's what I'm saying. I want the chat to understand. We're not saying that all women are alpha widows.
Mm-mm.
What we're saying is that happens to females, but the same thing can happen to males. But I think it depends on how a man deals with it on the Oneitis side and whether he can understand that it's having an effect on him and it's holding him back from moving on. Because we know a lot of men. I mean, we all work in this space one way or another. We know a lot of men that never move on.
So, Phil, what do you think? You think Oneitis is the equivalent of, in a man, the equivalent of alpha widow?
Here's the deal, man. I think Oneitis is real simple, man. These guys, man, they build these constructs in their mind around a woman. They make them feel a certain way, and they get the feels to the point to where they let everything else go. They let their mission go. They let their peer groups go. They let everything go and pedestalize this woman, which further propagates the issues we have in intersexual dynamics and what we have going on with men and women, and why hypergamy is exploding to a level that should have never been. I agree with Raith, though, saying that it's fundamentally the man's issue. 100%. I think that for a man to have Oneitis, Mark mentioned right there, I was married to her for 12 years. Let that sink in for a second. This man invested 12 years of provisioning, 12 years of time, 12 years of trying to get this woman to understand his perspective, 12 years of raising kids, 12 years. Okay. I don't think Mark necessarily had Oneitis. I think Mark necessarily had a poor return on investment. Okay. There's a big confusion there between Oneitis and a poor return on investment. This man invested 12 years of his life that he will never get back. That woman literally stole that from him. Because if it wasn't stolen, he'd still be married to her today. So I think oneitis is a construct that men put in their heads. You know, I really believe in the end, there is no the one. There really isn't. They're all the same. What value can she bring to your life, right? But the thing is you pedestalize these women and boom, there you go. You're off on a tangent, man. You let everything else go. You become stagnant in your life. You can't understand and resolve because men are logic. We operate on that logic. We want to make things better. We want to lead the situation. We want to have the situation in an ideal framework in our mind. And so the oneitis situation is pure and simple. You have a weak man that pedestalizes a woman. That is oneitis. Or you have a man that has invested all of his time, energy, and resources for multiple years. Really think about that first. 12 years. How many minutes, how many hours, how many days is 12 years? How much money is 12 years?
A lot.
I don't know.
Yeah, there you go, bro. And see, he can laugh about it now, but do you understand my perspective, Mark? I don't necessarily.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Yeah.
I don't think you have oneitis. I don't think you had oneitis for the woman. You sat back and logically thought, well, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing men go through.
Is it oneitis, or is it the title? Is it the title? Because you mentioned investment, Phil. So when a guy, I've been married for 13 years. Mark's married for 12. When you put all that time in, you've established this title that I am her husband. You know, is it the losing of the title and the position after your investment is what really is what the oneitis is about? What tears the guy apart, or is it the pussy? I think I would like to think it's the title and the position and the investment more than the puss. But that's just
I think it's the pussy. That's my opinion.
It's the death of a dream. It's the death of a dream. That was the death I experienced, not her.
Yeah. Well, the question is, because I want to get back to this, but the question is oneitis the equivalent of alpha widow? That's the question. It's an important question.
So.
It's an important question because I'll tell you guys, out there in the purple pill, it is the equivalent. It's 100% the equivalent male, female, and it's all over if you do the search. And I'm going to disagree completely. It's 100% not. And it's based on the fact that men and women love differently. It's idealistic versus opportunistic. If you think about alpha widow, it is opportunistic.
Yeah.
If you think about oneitis, it's idealism.
Yeah, but because
it's
we
not
differ,
the same, but it has some visual similarities, right? So it is 100% not equivocally the same thing at all. Similarities only, but that's where it stops. I think it's not the equivalent, and that the similarities have a different application and execution. But for men, it is acquired over a period of time. Alpha widowing is a rapid situation. Hence the reason that we always say and believe in, and actually that for women, 5 minutes of alpha is worth 5 years of beta. That's about what we all know to be true in the red pill. You know, oneitis is often much more easily broken with the simple application of brand new poon in a man's life, but it's a hard break because the idealism is what's holding him back. So that's my take on the reason that oneitis is difficult is because a man has that idealism that he has relational equity. The more I put in, right? The more that I put into this relationship, the more she'll love me, the better it is. It's idealism. And when that idealism isn't there, what does Ryan Stone call it? Unconscionable contract, right?
Yeah.
It's this unconscionable contract, and women just do not operate that way. So I definitely fully believe that alpha widowing is not the equivalent to male oneitis. It is different.
Hey, Thor, read what Billy 5077 put up there.
Sure. It's all of it together. Ego investment, parental investment, territorialism, constructed nonsense like oneitis that's so devastating to men. As you're saying, everything's everything, then I agree. Everything's everything.
He's essentially agreeing with what Mark's saying. You know, it's losing the dream. It's everything together. This relationship and family and everything that you were seeing yourself having in the future.
Of course. And that's the other point that I bring up why it's different, Billy, is because Oneitis actually has a very different outcome than alpha widowing. If you think about it, Oneitis can actually be life-threatening to the man.
Well, that's what he followed up on.
In almost no case is alpha widowing life-threatening to the woman.
Yeah,
Well, that's what
he
when he followed up saying it's getting zeroed out biologically. That can mean sexually, but also sociologically, environmentally, and mentally. For a woman, getting alpha widowed is primarily biological. It's just physical. They're getting zeroed out from that, but not everything else.
Yeah, don't put that guy up. I'm not gonna look at him.
Yeah, don't do that.
He's gonna put crap up there like that. You know, Ryan Stone's a friend, and you want to talk crap, then you can get out of the chat. Okay, because look, we're just having a fun conversation, and a broken clock can be right twice a day. So if they got a good point, we're going to validate it, regardless of where it comes from. We're having fun. We're not out to slam anybody. But yeah, absolutely, Billy. That was really great. Yeah, we can pick on Junior, but otherwise,
yo.
We're gonna have fun with
No,
it.
you can't take my statement.
Yo.
So
Don't hate on me.
So
Yo, don't hate on me.
What do you guys think about Oneitis and alpha widowing? I mean, can you agree a little bit? Because there are similarities, I think.
I think we all agree on what alpha widowing is. I think.
What about the Oneitis?
Oneitis, I in theory I agree with everything you say, but like I said, I think if you take the way men live their lives and women live their lives, there are certain parallels. Are they going to have the same outcomes? Probably not. Okay. Why? Because of the way we process information differently. And because we process different information differently, we process grief differently. We process outcomes differently. Is Oneitis I'll agree with this. Oneitis is not a lifelong thing.
Right.
Okay. I can agree with that. You know, does Oneitis happen? I think it does when we, as Mark said, we feel a loss of investment. We feel a loss of the dream, whether that's through, you know, her screwing around on you or leaving you, or you leaving her, or, you know, your wife passing away and stuff like that. There's that loss of what we thought our life was going to be. Okay. How we process that and how we grieve through that, you know, determines whether or not we stand up. I don't believe in this whole, you know, what I want to say, zeroing out. Okay. Women don't zero men out. Men zero themselves out.
Agree.
100.
Okay.
Yep.
And they do that because they don't have the skill set to process loss. So if they can't process loss, then why should I be living? And that's why you see men when they lose things, okay, they look at, I want to take the 5-cent solution because that's the easiest way away from it. Instead of, and this is the main thing, we are constantly telling men, you got to go in and you got to do the work. And it took Mark a year and a half to do the work to recover from that. All right. But he didn't see the ultimate way to end it was to take the 5-cent solution.
Correct.
All right. So men zero themselves out. Women don't do it. You can restart your life at any point. You can recreate yourself at any point.
It's having the willingness and the desire to, and that's good thing you pull that up, Phil or Thor, because I wanted to bring this up. What Coco said, I believe that women being alpha widows more than just sexual experience. If he's the whole package and she screwed up and lost him, she will never forgive herself.
Yeah.
That's a great, different perspective to look at it from. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and that's really what we're talking about right here, because, you know, there is a lot of evidence coming down the pike that is just an indicator that as women approach middle age and have been married for some time, they're being told that they missed that alpha Look at the divorce rate, close to 50% being initiated by women. It certainly is a factor that alpha.
I got a story for you on this, just because I need to say, because I think it's so freaking funny. So one of my friends from high school, his mom decided that she could have got better, and this lasted one summer only. She thought she could get better, so they separated, and then she literally lived on a cot in some big group home down the shore, just to like experience what like a summer at the shore would be like, as somebody would do when they're in high school or in college, just like having fun goofing around with a bunch of people. And inevitably came back and they got back together. But it's just like, it's like funny how you say that, like always thinking they could get more, they could get something better. I just think it's so silly. It's so silly how women think this way when they've got the rich man, or like he may not be exciting, but he's safe and everything is set up for them. Yet they still try and throw it away because they want that alpha. They want something more.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about what we talked about today, and then we'll do the wrap up. Any final thoughts on alpha widowing? I think it's important that men really do understand that it's out there. It's not every woman, of course, but it's important that you understand that there is really no relational equity from a man's perspective, particularly when it comes to Oneitis. You're 100% responsible for it yourself. That doesn't mean that you're responsible for her actions. She will take her actions as she sees fit based upon her gender, her instincts, her existential fears, and the circumstances that she finds herself in. But it is still your fault to not recognize your burden of performance in that relationship. And if you put yourself into Oneitis, I think every man here has done it and learned from it. I think it's part of growing. At least you've done a portion of it. And some men do it without even having a sexual partner. Hence the reason for OnlyFans and the simping that goes on today. It's really evident with the sexlessness that young men are feeling, and the Instagram modeling where women are pining for these very famous alpha men. So I think it's just a little bit more prominent and in our face. You have to be aware of alpha widowing and Oneitis. They're not the same thing, yet they share many visual similarities. And I think they both kind of end up, feeling bad emotionally. One of them for being zeroed out, and then, or at least feeling like he's zeroed out, and that his life comes crashing down, and the realization that, he did this, and it's dangerous. Some men can't accept that because they feel that relational equity was so important to him and he put so much into it, and he can't take it anymore. His life's over. Can't have his kids. He's so invested. And that's a very sad thing. And, hats off to Rollo Tomasi for writing about this. He was inspired by Oneitis essentially to get involved in this space and to eventually write his books, which, are very well written and talk about these red pill awareness issues. Right or wrong, they definitely bring it to the forefront. And I think it's done much, much more good than harm, for sure. I know it irritates people, but I like having these conversations because they're fun. So we've got the Oneitis, not alpha widowing for male, but alpha widowing, if you're aware of it, that you just need to be the next best alpha. You got to be the alpha, and it goes away. So what are you guys' thoughts on it? This whole strange topic.
Well, I want to say shout out to Rollo Tomasi, if that's him in the chat that did chat in there. Shout out to him. Thank you for tuning in, sir. You are a legend in the space. And he says the sunk cost is not Oneitis. So shout out to him for that. I really think that when we look at the two, as you said, that they're similar but not the same. And women could get over the alpha widowing by finding a better alpha. Now, as what Coco was saying, it's harder because now she's trying to pine after that, find a replica of that guy. And I think that makes it harder for women to get over the alpha being alpha widowed. And that increases the risk is that they increase their body count in trying to find this guy that could do that, which also in the long run devalues them in men's eyes. But I think for guys that have Oneitis, I think it's a lot easier to get over. It may hurt more, as Raith was pointing out. It took Mark a year and a half to get over this to the point where he could build up, but he could recover. I don't necessarily think women can recover getting over it being alpha widowed without the risk is almost too much for them, because if they keep on trying and failing, they're just adding more bodies to their body count, and it makes it more difficult for them to pair bond in the long run. So I think it's, if you're looking at the two, Oneitis is a lot more curable than alpha widow.
Yeah, I think there's only one way out of alpha widow. You have to be a better alpha. And look at Jada Smith.
Yeah, I mean,
you gotta update the firmware, like I was saying earlier in the stream. Man, that stuff is it's like a program that can't be deleted until a better program comes along. And then all of what she's experienced before has been erased and rewritten.
Absolutely. Mark Daniels, what do you think?
I think I want to comment on something that Coco said here. Said she'll try the rest of her life to try and find a replacement of the man she drove away or lost. I can verify that because I've been on the end of that where they did drive me away. And like I said, I cut my ex-wife off. During that year and a half, she was still trying to get a hold of me. I just wouldn't read her messages. I wouldn't do anything because I just had enough of it. And as I said, and I've had that happen with other women before too. I cut them off because they basically were being disrespectful. Now I take my responsibility because I allowed it to get that way. But it's easy to be a player. It's easy to pick up women. It's easy to bed women down. But to have a long-term relationship, especially in the day and age in the U.S., I was the dependable, responsible, steady, everything that people said they want. But I didn't maintain that mystery and that alpha part that they're attracted to. And what happens is they lose interest, they become bored, and then they want to run around. And then, of course, I left them. And then that's why I say I could go back to any of those women today, I'll guarantee it, and be with them again. Make contact with them and be with them again. And I'm not saying that to be arrogant. It's just a dynamic of that type of, we'll say, relation that plays out in those type of relationships. It's as predictable as the sun coming up in the morning and setting in the evening. So I think everything is right on mark here. A lot of women won't want to admit that. I think men are more logical. They're willing to admit that they have certain feelings and that they got this Oneitis or whatever it happens to be, or this investment, and it's really hard and it hurts. But as I think Glenn said, we're able to let this go. We're able to move on. And that's what I did for the year and a half. And each time I've been through that, it's been more than once, I worked on myself because I can't change them. And I have to take responsibility for myself. And I think that's the true definition of I don't like the term high status man or alpha man, but a man who's trying to reach his full potential. He wants to blame, and he does, but he realizes the blame lies within him. And he needs to look within himself. He takes the word blame out of his vocabulary and says, hey, how did I contribute to this? What can I do to better myself so I don't go through this pain again? Pain and suffering is a great motivator. I've learned more in my life when I went through those hard times than I ever would have before. So it's a blessing for us men, actually. It really is when we get zeroed out, as they call it, I think, if you choose to perceive it that way. And the choice is always ours. I can choose what goes on between I can't choose what she thinks or what she does, but I can choose what I think and what I do.
Right.
That's my take.
No, that's a good take. That's fantastic. I like your take. Raith.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. I mean, men have the ability to accept responsibility, and that's the biggest thing, and accepting responsibility means owning your part of it. And even if it's a failure, understanding that you are a part of that reason for the failure. And that's why men recover. and women don't. Because I can almost guarantee you, take any woman that's alpha widowed, she can find the reasons why that guy wasn't the guy, even though she's longing for the emotions and the feelings and the physical attraction and all that stuff that she got from him. And I don't think, as a rule, men do a lot of comparative analysis of the women they're with, unless they're in a long-term relationship. And after they've made an initial investment of 12 years, then they start doing that comparative. But eventually they come to the realization that, I was a part of this and I need to do something about this.
Does anybody want to expand on what Rolo was saying? Phil, can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's just kind of like what I was saying to to Mark here about his 12 years, man, of investment, man. I mean, it's they're not the same. They're not synonymous. They're just not. The big thing is to understand, that's why I kept hammering on Mark a little bit, saying, it's just not. You had a poor return on your investment, man. It's a losing investment. It's like buying a stock at the top and selling it at the bottom. But it's your friggin' life. It doesn't matter. I think in the long run, what he's trying to say here, and the sunk cost is not Oneitis, is precisely how I dissertated that to Mark. If you invest all this time, energy, and resource into a failing woman or into a failed relationship, and she leaves you or you divorce or whatever the hell happens, you guys go your own separate ways, and you miss that. And you miss her, you miss the situation, even though it was crap. It's like what Mark was saying. It took him a year and a half to get over that. It was the loss of the dream. It's the ideal, the construct. That's why I kept saying Oneitis is a construct that you place in your head because you're weak and you pedestalize her. It's super simple to understand. And, that validates my point because I think a lot of guys get confused on that, and they like, here's the deal, with my experiences on Tinder, I'm just going to put this out here right now. Some of the women that I've talked to, they were married, 15, 20, 25 years. One woman in particular was married 26 years to this man. And I started talking to her and, she was like, she was constantly telling me, she was sharing all this information about her ex-husband. God, he's just begging me. He's, he's all sorry now. And he just wants to make things better and blah, 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 and keep it on and on and on and on. And I told her, I was like, well, what do you expect? He's invested 26 years of his life in you. You guys have children together. You guys liquidated all your assets. His world is gone. Everything he has worked for, everything he has built and created for his tribe was washed away in one storm. That storm was your separation and divorce. And she kind of sat there for a second and looked at me and I said, and it's really hard for you to respect him as a man because he refuses to move on. And yet here I am sitting on your couch because you're moving on right now. And the thing is men need to realize that when a woman is done, she's just done. It doesn't matter if you've invested 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years like Mark Daniels. It is a super simple thing. Oneitis is definitely not the loss or a poor ROI on your investment. That's why in this space, especially the red pill community, especially in men's help and progressing men to a better position, kind of like what Raith do and everything like that, your greatest asset is your time. Period. Your second greatest asset is your peace. And as a logical human being, as a man, you're looking at the situation and going, how can I fix this? Some people are just unreconcilable, man. And you have to do kind of like what Mark did. Well, shit, it's been 12 years. We're done. Pull the pin on the grenade and let it blow up.
Yeah.
But it's a sunk cost is not Oneitis is precisely what I was telling and talking about with Mark Daniels. Mark, I hate to use you as the example. Hey, I've been there, done that myself, bro. I've been there, done that myself. And I realize that my two most valuable assets are my time and my peace. And you have to realize, men, that if you're in a situation right now and you're kind of listening to this, what Mark and I and Raith and everybody have been talking about on this live stream, it's really simple for you to understand that if you would just take a step back for a moment and go, Jesus, is this really worth my time and my peace? Is that pussy really that good? And when you really start looking at it in that perspective, you really start to wake up in your mind. You go, wait a minute here. There is far younger, far tighter, far greater in this world that I could be putting up with right now and enjoy. But the thing is dudes, they want things to work. They want things to be fixed. They want things to be reconciled because you're logical. You operate on that logic. When things are failed, things are failed. When they cross lines, it's done and over. It doesn't matter how long you've invested in it. It doesn't mean you're stuck on her. It means you're stuck on yourself because you're too afraid to do what Raith was talking about. And that's to grow and level up, to be a better man, to chase that excellence, to find something better in yourself and achieve it. You know, as long as a guy sits back on the sidelines and the game's still playing, the game's still going, you're going to either sit on the sidelines. You're going to sit on the sidelines and watch that game be played, and life is going to pass you by. Or you're going to say, you know, this was a poor situation I got myself into. Let me go ahead and cut the line and let the fish go. Get with guys like Ray. Get with guys like Mark Daniels. Get with people that have some sage wisdom in there and figure out a way to improve who you are as a man. It's really simple here. But it's not simple because you are so over-egally invested in that poor relationship. You are so ego invested that you would rather, hear me out for a second, you would rather fight your way to a winning position than realize that you've been in a losing position this whole time. So 100%, Oneitis is paralysis. But what I'm talking about is the simple fact is not all situations make you a Oneitis individual. Oneitis just is basically when you're looking at a woman and she is so far up on that pedestal, you're carrying her purse. You're basically her butler, okay, for a piece of ass. Let me tell you something. That's not the only piece of ass in this world. Get your shit together and move on.
Oh, that's really good, man. Thank you for bringing that back into perspective. And thank you, Rolo, for starting that conversation. It was important to make the distinction for Oneitis versus alpha widowing. Remember, let's just do it one more time. Alpha widowing is when a woman misses the opportunity to consolidate on a confirmed high value sexual market, high sexual market value male that becomes the new standard for what she believes she can attract as a potential mate in the future. Oneitis is an unhealthy romantic obsession with a single person, usually accompanied by unreciprocated affection and completely unrealistic idealization of the said person. Oneitis is paralysis. You cease to mature, you cease to move, and you cease to be you. Page 3. Got the whole ball rolling on the red pill. So thank you, Rollo. Appreciate that a lot. Let's go ahead and get our final thoughts in here. As a group, guys, thanks for coming today. What do you think about this topic? And let us know what you're doing, where we can find you, and we'll go ahead and finish out today. So let's start with Raith.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a standpoint, we've covered the topic. What I'd really like to say to guys is, you know, if you're not happy with your life, do something to change it. Find a mentor, find a coach, find somebody that can help you move forward. And if you feel like you're at an all-time low, that's when it's most important to reach out to someone else and say, hey, I'm having these thoughts, or this is happening in my life and I don't know that I can deal with it. This community or other communities are there. Use them. But start having a conversation with somebody. You know, Rollo's books are good. These YouTube things are good. But the reality of it is you have to start working through the issues. And if you can't do it on your own, find someone that you can work with. Whether it's a friend who's lived through it or somebody that can professionally help you. Don't sit in a quagmire of your own self-pity, a quagmire of pain and depression. do something for yourself. Because I can tell you right now, no one is going to come to your door and do it for you. It's that simple.
Those are some cold words, Raith, but it's truth.
Huds, what do you got to say? Junior.
Yeah. Get out of here. Exactly what Raith was saying. You're not like, you need to be better. That's what it comes down to. And you're not weak for searching for the answers and searching for help. And you also don't have to broadcast that to the world that you're working with a mentor or a coach. But nobody's going to save you but yourself. And I think that's a very good point that you bring, Raith. What's going on with me? If you wanted to do any type of dating consulting, things like that, you can reach me at the Hudsman on Instagram. It's the best way to communicate with me. Got any questions, anything like that? And then we had our first episode this past week of Thirsty Thursdays with Glenn on the Your Big Brothers podcast, and that that was hilarious. So if you guys got time, go ahead and give it a listen, because that was a hell of a lot of fun, and I cannot wait until we keep bringing other people on and have some of those raunchier discussions.
Your sister was nice.
She was. That's it for me.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, you can find me at Mark Daniels, Mark's Inspiration on YouTube, Mark's Inspiration in Instagram. The show tonight at 6 o'clock. December the 3rd, we're going to have Afi Kingdom, King Dre, and AV Alpha Villains here for the show. So that's going to be a great night of golden game nuggets for you gents out there. Check out my books on Amazon. And if you'd like to get my help personally, my website is marksinspiration.com. Thank you.
That's awesome. You know, come to think of it, Afi's pretty nice guy. I really enjoyed spending my time with him. You know, Glenn and I, we didn't say on the show, but last week we missed all you guys in Las Vegas. It was a good time. We certainly got to fulfill some of our social needs, wouldn't you say, Glenn? And hang with Afi, Kevin Savo. I enjoyed the shit. I was too short, man. And of course, Miguel, Dollar Cost Crypto. Got to see the Sticky Paws studio. Got to shout out to those guys for really setting up something I think is going to become more and more necessary across the nation. And that's those amazing studios that you can go to and put out your content. And for content creators and influencers, it was pretty damn impressive, I had to say. That was a nice weekend. A little dusty riding out there to Vegas on the Harleys, but well worth it. We both had our cuts on and enjoyed the shit out of it. And there was, we got to see some interesting genetic samples, wouldn't you say, Glenn?
Yeah. No, it was a great time. It was a great time to collaborate with those guys. Great time to set up some networking. Definitely be looking forward to what Savo, I, and Thor, and the rest of the guys that are out there have in store for you guys. We are still pushing Mind Dates. Mind Dates is going to be the first red pill romantic comedy. It's going to be a dick flick, not a chick flick. So stay tuned to that. We were talking about that while we're out there. But also, you guys, I posted a couple of days ago the importance of having a mentor, and Raith mentioned it, Mark mentioned it. It's important to, if you're a young man, find a mentor in your life. Look, everybody needs a mentor at some point in their life, and it's good to plug yourself in with one, you know, while you can. And you know what? There's 6 guys on here. At least 4 of them are more senior than I, that are great men to have as a mentor. I'm blessed to have Thor as a mentor, but all these chaps on here, all these gentlemen are great guys to have in your corner to lean on when you're going through a situation. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart to realize that you know that you need help and where you could get good help. You know, so don't miss out on an opportunity with connecting yourself with good men that can mentor you and help you level up, and that want to see you level up. So, skull for that one.
Yes, skull. What are you dressing up as for Halloween there, Glenn?
I'm gonna be Thor.
Ah,
No,
want to borrow my
no.
hammer?
But you know what? You know what? I'm just gonna say this. I can't wait for those patches to come in.
We'll have to show those off later.
Yeah.
But Alder cars will have them.
Yep. They're sick.
All right, Phil Foster, your final words. Where can we find you? And in a couple of weeks, we're going to be doing at the end of November and the beginning of December, we're going to do some fitness shows for sure. We're going to talk about self-improvement, and leading that charge is Phil Foster Fitness. Phil.
What's going on? First off, man, Thor and the rest of the panel, man, thanks so much for, the stimulating conversation. Raith, I really appreciate your opinions, man. I mean, you're a smart guy. Seriously, man, your angle is a little bit different than mine when it comes to it. You're more of the mindset and I'm more about the fucking when it comes to alpha widows. I appreciate that. That's the great thing about coming around guys like you guys. Is the simple fact is we can all bounce these ideas around, and hopefully somebody in the chat or somebody that might pick up this stream later down the road might pick this information up and go, hey, wait a minute. Whoa. Slow down here for a second. What's going on in my life? Let me take a look at that. And so that's invaluable right there. And I love that about being a part of the DragonShip, having sage guys like you, Raith, Mark, and Thor. You guys have a lot more experience. The three of you together have like a combined total experience of like over 150 years. It's amazing when you really start thinking of it like that. You know what I mean? You guys are craftsmen in life because you guys have experienced more life than the average person. You're older than us all. And that's a compliment. I'm not hating on you there. You can find me at philfosterfitness.com. I got your hormones, supplements, training through my app. You can find me on all socials at Phil Foster _. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Same thing, Phil Foster. My channel's been a little bit quiet, but I'm starting to refocus that lens, and I'm going to start working on that one now. Just kind of getting some other things out of the way. Once again, just understand that what Raith said, and I keep homing in on that. What he said is maybe it's time to have a conversation. If you're in this chat or watch this stream, and you're dealing with something, especially with a woman, or it doesn't matter what you're dealing with, listen to what Raith said. It's time to have that conversation. And like what Huds said, you don't have to broadcast it to the world. It's super important to listen to what these men are saying because they are telling you the truth. It's important for you to unstuck and unfuck yourself and move forward, because see, what's happened is you've got this situation in your life, whatever it is, whether it's a woman, a job, you're living, whatever it is, you have something going on and you can't get past it, man. No man is an island. And that's why we come together on the DragonShip like this. You have 6 different minds on this screen right now that you're watching. If you're at work, driving in your car, you're sitting there, I don't know, doing whatever. The moral of the story is, it takes you to make that action happen. You have to have that conscious decision in your mind to say, you know what, I can't get past this. And so what Raith said is 100% accurate. Get yourself a mentor. Speak with someone. And like what Hud said, don't announce it to the world. Because here's the deal. There's a lot of poor people out there. What I mean by poor is that they're low vibration, man. They don't care about you. They want to see you lose instead of win. So find that golden one out there that can help you through the situation. And hey, you might have to have some skin in the game, and that's not a bad thing. Paying for a service is the ultimate accountability to you, because the simple fact is you aren't going to do something for free all the way to the end. But if you have some skin in the game, you're going to see it all the way to the end. You want your money's worth. So it's important to realize that we get together on these Saturday streams, the DragonShip here, because we want you guys to understand one fundamental thing and one fundamental thing only, and that is for you to grow as a man and become the man you were created to be. You can no longer sit on the sidelines. It's time for you to get in the game. Happy Halloween. If you guys have kids, if you're a single dad, man, and you're out there trick-or-treating with your kids, have a great friggin' time. If you're not seeing your kids this weekend and it's Halloween on Monday, hey, man, my thoughts are with you guys, man. Hang in there, man. It's going to get better in the end. Halloween's a big family time, and so that's why I wanted to mention that. I want to shout out to all the single dads out there that have went through something with a woman. Then if you don't have access to your kids over Halloween, hey, man, it's going to be okay. Lift your head up. There's going to be other Halloweens, and there's going to be more time in the future. You just keep playing the long game, my friend. And with that, man, you guys have a great weekend.
Oh, thank you, Phil. It's such an amazing thing to have, these dragons on the dragon ship, especially with the different backgrounds we all have. We share some things in common. We're all men. We've had experiences. We've had rites of passages. And we are shouldering that burden of performance even as we speak here. So speaking to the audience, thank you for joining us today. And you do need those mentors. And I'll go ahead and plug Phil. Phil does coaching. Raith does coaching, or shall I say consulting? Let's say consulting, because fitness consulting, relationship consulting. Huds is a relationship consultant. Mark is an inspirational consultant and does relationship consulting. Glenn Laurence, myself, particularly on long-term relationships and creating a dominant masculine presence for yourself, will do more for yourself in life than just about anything else, because it starts to put your house in order when you start working towards becoming that dominant masculine presence. It's a bit of identity. It's a bit of hard work. It's a bit of taking accountability for who you are and ownership for yourself. And that's what we advocate here. Of course, you can reach me at becomedurable.com for all those services and my lecture series on creating a dominant masculine presence. So take a look at that. And for you, Glenn, you want to know what I'm going to Halloween as?
I'm gonna guess Logan.
Captain Marvel, you son of a bitch.
So you're gonna have a blonde wig?
Isn't my hair already blonde? Don't I have a low enough cut top?
Your top's low enough,
I mean, everything's fair in the new gender war, right?
That's right.
Guys,
I'm gonna be for Halloween. I'm gonna be Glenn Laurence, because that guy, I was gonna go as Phil Foster, but I didn't want to shave my head.
nothing like being a villain. Guys,
That's fucking savage,
I'm
man.
looking at bringing some guest cars on soon. It was really nice to have Rollo jump in and help us with that. Thank you, Rollo, once again. And till next time, guys, come see us on the Dragon Ship.